Welcome everybody, it's your boy, the Versace Stoner, with another episode of VSW. Thank you everybody. Okay, today, what are we talking about? We're talking about WrestleMania 6. The big one, 67,678 in attendance on April 1st, 1990. Live from the Toronto Sky Dome in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. This was just a great spectacle for its time. Just a wild. You had Gorilla Monsoon, Jesse the Body Ventura on the commentary. And it was just, this was just like a lot of firsts in this WrestleMania. There's a lot of great matches. One of my probably all-time favorite WrestleManias. They're all my favorite WrestleManias, actually. Let's just put it this way. From 10 under, they're all my favorite. And then I pick and choose. I love 30, 20, and there's some other ones in there. But the original ones are like the first. I love them. Okay, let's get right into the action, though. We had Earthquake with the mouth of the cell, Jimmy Hart defeating Hercules. This was now the time that Earthquake was starting to make a name for himself, kind of coming up. Really, he would be facing Hogan later that year at SummerSlam, so he was really dominating the WWE and making people fear him. He was a big man. He could move. He was great. Earthquake is one of the greatest wrestlers. You had the model Rick Martel defeating Coco Beware. Here's another unbelievable superstar, model Rick Martel. The legend Coco Beware. He's the veteran. Model is a veteran too. He was in the tag teams before. Now he's singles competition. And he'd probably be one of the greatest single wrestlers to never win a title. No titles, I don't believe, as a singles competition WWE wrestler. Especially as Rick the Model Martel. He came close. He wrestled Shawn Michaels, but he never won it, the gold. And, it's kind of a shame because he had all the right stuff of making of a champion. He would have been a great intercontinental champion, actually. I don't know how he would have done on the world at the time because it was all big guys. Hogan dominated that scene, Macho Man. You had a very high expectation of who your world champion was going to be, and they're the face of the company. But the IC champion, definitely, it could have been in his grasp. Definitely. Earthquake, going back a match, Earthquake probably could have been world champion material for a little bit as a transitional or as someone to hold it. He had the capability in the very beginning, and as the time went on, things got different. He tagged up, with Typhoon, they had Tugboat, Natural Disasters, and they were a very great tag team, and that was good, and I did enjoy them, and they saw some gold, but as a singles competitor, you always like to have them have a little strap around their waist, at least once in their career. You had the Barbarian defeating Tito Santana. The Barbarian, great wrestler. He was teaming with the Warlord in now singles competition. He would go on to defeat, Tito, another legend in wrestling. Opening up WrestleMania 1, just a tremendous athlete. Really, I think he's underrated in how much he played a role in these early WrestleManias, and just underrated as a wrestler in general in this day and age. They probably wouldn't like his gimmick. They probably wouldn't like a lot of things, but he was talented. He was very talented, and I love to watch him. I'll never forget the time I saw him locally. I'll go into that story in another episode, and if I haven't already covered it before. But anyway, I saw him locally, and it was just a good old fun fashion time with some unexpected LOLs. You have the Ravishing One, Rick Rude, with Bobby the Brain Heenan defeating Jimmy Superfly Snuka. Rick Rude would start to really solidify his career here, too. I think, again, being in that feud with Ultimate Warrior in previous SummerSlams and so forth, now he's starting to, that feud is going to continue. You'll see him fighting also Ultimate Warrior later that year, for the title at the same SummerSlam that Hogan will be facing Earthquake. Rick Rude, one of my all-time favorites, should have held the world title multiple times. Great wrestler, great in the mic, just unbelievable heel. From everything he did from his early on his career to DX, he was great. WCW, whatever he was in, he made it better. It's a shame that we lost him so young. It really is. He had Brutus, the Barber Beefcake, defeating Mr. Perfect with the Genius. Brutus, cutting and strutting, was now, singles too, no longer with Valentine. He was a super face now. Really with the charisma, had the cutters, always be trying to cut people's hair. He was great. Really could get the crowd riled up. Mr. Perfect, unbelievable wrestler. Should have held the world title as well many, many times. Didn't get to, but he should have. Mr. Perfect and Brutus was a great match that night. It's classic wrestling. It's classic WWE. That's what I call WWF. I hate to say it, because I don't like to say it, but WWF wrestling to me is this. WWE wrestling for me is PG era and so on and so forth. But for WWF, it's from this, early rock and roll era stuff, 70s wrestling right up into the Attitude Era. To me, that is WWF. Going on with more matches for this card, you had the great tag team match, the Orient Express, Sato and Tanaka with Mr. Fuji getting the win over the Rockers, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty via a countout. Still a loss, still a victory. And, the Rockers would start to lose a little steam around here. I mean, I think they were, or rather pick up steam, but eventually we all know what happened with the Rockers. They would break up. Not so much now, but in a couple of years from this point they would. And you never thought they would. You never really thought they would. HBK and Maya Jannetty you thought were inseparable. And I was surprised. Like I said, I'm going back. This is going forward a few years to when they break up. But, looking back at it, at let's say WrestleMania 6, I would never, ever, ever think they would be broken up. I thought they were just tag teams. As they started to grow, you could see one being better than the other. And that's, natural in tag teams sometimes for one to outshine the other one. And then when solos careers happen, one takes off. But you just never really thought it would happen that soon or whenever. As a kid, you never think tag teams are going to break up. You had the Hart Foundation, Bret Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart defeating the Bolsheviks, Nikolai Volkov and Boris Zhukov. Great tag team action there. Very, Nikolai Volkov and Boris, very, very physical wrestlers. Nikolai, legend, in this game. And the Hart Foundation speak for themselves. Bret the Hitman Hart, Jim the Anvil Neidhart. These guys are just tremendous tag teams and singles wrestlers. They went on to do wonderful things. Bret especially, world champion, intercontinental champion first, then world champion. He made it right to the top, face of the company, and just a couple years later, he was face of the company. Very exciting tag team matchup. you had the controversial match, Roddy Piper versus Bad News Brown, and this fought to a double count on. This is a very controversial matchup. It's actually been scrubbed from the network that Peacock, has been picked up the WWE network for the U.S. people. It's actually been scrubbed for that. And because of the fact that, Rowdy Piper was blackfacing. He painted his face black to fight Bad News Brown. It's racially insensitive. It's racially wrong. For the time, I don't think it wasn't perceived as bad as it is today. I mean, obviously everybody's more aware today. And everybody's more aware of each other today and how, things can hurt, whether they're in fun or not. Racial jokes are they're hurtful. This wouldn't fly today at any WrestleMania wrestling event. This just wouldn't fly in the world today. In society the way it is, it wouldn't fly, and nor should it. I'm not saying it's right or I condone it, but it did happen. I don't think it should be scrubbed, completely gone. There should be a disclaimer, stating this match is racially insensitive. Viewer discretion is advised. There is things on here that are offensive. Some of the earlier promos in WWE were very offensive. And wrestling in general. It was the nature of the business. You got to remember, it was a carny business. It started with carnivals and stuff. It wasn't meant originally on main TV for the public. It was, Saturday night going to the carnival and seeing people wrestle in the ring. With that being said, it was a great matchup. It was a good rivalry. Roddy Piper's always good. I love Bad News Brown. He's one of my favorite wrestlers. Very underrated in the WWE. And he is another one that deserved a lot more gold than he should have gotten. And like I said, it's a great match. If you can find it, watch it. It is part of the WrestleMania. Then you got Hacksaw Jim Duggan defeating Dino Bravo with Mouth of the South Jimmy Hart. Hacksaw, another WWE stable right here. The first Royal Rumble winner, always there. Never really saw much, of the championship life, but he was, the standard of WWE, the face of it. Maybe not, as big as Hogan, but, he had the All-American gimmick. He had the 2x4, the hoe, thumbs up, American flag. He was very charismatic. He could scrap. He wasn't such a boring wrestler as a kid. He was a scrapper, brawler. So this brought excitement. He could go toe-to-toe with people. Never give up. Hacksaw, tremendous person in general. And it was great seeing him, wrestle in these early manias. And really just giving it his all. In my opinion, he had a successful career without winning in gold. He was great. You had the Big Boss Man defeating Akeem with Slick. Now, this was an interesting matchup because previously, they were tag team partners. This would be the time that Big Boss Man would start to turn face, as Akeem would actually phase out eventually, but they would break up. They were the Twin Towers. Very nice, successful tag team in my opinion. I love their theme song. They would face each other. Big Boss Man would go on to become a singles competitor and go face for a while, and then back heel later on in the Attitude Era and so forth, so on. If you know the history of wrestling and how it is, this was a pretty good matchup. You also had the American Dusty Rhodes and Sapphire with Miss Elizabeth defeating the Macho King Randy Savage and Queen Sherry. This would be a pretty interesting feud that was going on between the two of them. Both top quality superstars. And, they even brought out all the stuff. Dusty Rhodes bringing in Miss Elizabeth, his former manager, into the mix. So, it was really just a great match. It was a good match for this Mania. It fit it. And I like that feud. I do like, I like Macho Man's heel run that he did as Macho King. It brought something to it, It really did. You had the $1 Million Championship match. $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase with Virgil defeating Jake the Snake Roberts. You put that $1 Million title on the match. On the line, rather. Ted DiBiase, a legend in the game. He's been all over the place in the WrestleManias. Always a great man. He's a great wrestler. He's a great manager. He's a great tag team wrestler. He's just great all over. Probably one of my favorite all time. Just never, just growing up, always loved him as a heel. The way he tried to buy his way in to get anything that he wanted. It was always good. You had the Tag Team Championship match. Demolition, Axe, and Smash defeating the Colossal Connection of Andre the Giant and Haku, who were the current champions. With Bobby the Brain Heenan. This was a great matchup. By this time, obviously, Andre was way past his prime. If 3 was past his prime, by 6 he was way past his prime and having to do tag matches as he couldn't compete alone. But that's okay. He put on a show with, Haku. Haku's a tremendous athlete, wrestler, legend. And going up against Demolition, greatest tag team ever almost. And, this was classic tag team wrestling. Like I said, the tag team division in WWF was stacked back then. They had tag teams. They had people. They had wrestlers. Their tag teams were filled with stars. They weren't B teams. They weren't jobbers. They were all superstar tag teams here on these main event cards. It was great. It was a great time to be a tag team wrestling fan. And then you had the main event. This was a great main event, in my opinion. Okay, for the first time, you had face versus face. 2 of them, of WWE's biggest stars at the time, Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior, squaring off against each other. And, this was crazy. Ultimate Warrior was the IC champion. Hulk Hogan was the world champion. It's face versus face. It just was one of the first times it ever really happened. But, at that Royal Rumble earlier that year, you got to see these two kind of square off. And, the crowd just went wild. They ate it up. They wanted this match, so we got it. And, Hogan would go on a little bit, probably to go do movies and do other things anyways at the time. Hogan was in and out a little bit. He was starting to do Hollywood videoing. So, you had these two going at it. You really didn't know, who would win. Hogan was always the fan favorite. Always someone that would come out victorious. But you had Ultimate Warrior, the underdog, and, like I said, everybody was torn of who was going to win. Everybody was torn on who was who's favorite. The Hulkamaniacs, the Little Warriors, finally the Ultimate Warrior pulling it off, defeating Hulk Hogan, becoming the new WWE champion, and holding both belts for a minute as well. He was originally Warrior 2 belts, the original. And this was the end of WrestleMania 6. What a WrestleMania it was. Very electrifying, very on your seat. It was great to bring it to Canada. It was an all-around great event. I thank you all for listening. Check out later for WrestleMania 8 as we continue to keep on going and trudging through the WrestleManias as WrestleMania 37 approaches. Versace Stoner out.